just tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in being interviewed about your experience with COVID-19.
I saw it on Front Porch Forum, I guess, your article on it, and I thought, well, I'll just put my 2 cents in too, which it was kind of a different experience, and I've always done tile work most of my life, and I'm gonna be 64, and I decided, since I got new hips and knees are on the deck, I decided my wife thought I should retire when I was 62. So I did. And, you know, I'm always busy. And when I saw the coronavirus information, or COVID-19 in China, and, you know, students were being sent home from China, and the Chinese were definitely going under lockdown seriously. And then South Korea and Europe seemed to be getting hit quite badly. I knew it was going to be a tough virus, and probably similar to SARS, and probably run its course. And, you know, SARS kind of died out in Canada. It never really got to the United States. And then when it got here, I was concerned. I didn't really know many people that actually had the virus. I only knew 4. And out of that 4 people that I had known, one was 65, he did fine. One's about 57. She had a tough time for about 3 months, suffered from March right through May. And 2 guys I graduated high school with died. And I hadn't seen them in, you know, 45 years, but it still had a face to it. And so I only had a handful of people I knew, and I was surprised at the seriousness of, you know, the virus. So, and my wife and daughter were working from home remotely. Daughter was sent home from college to finish the semester, and my wife, where she works, they pretty much shut down except for production people. They were still considered essential workers for what they do. And I just continued doing what I normally do. I went cross country skiing quite a bit, fishing, and working on projects. I worked on our front porch, and I would say we were kind of connected to the tan trail, more or less. Our street is kind of, if you go either way, you're going to get on a tan trail, and probably 50 to 100 people would walk by when I was working on the porch, say for 6 hours every day, because they were home from, you know, either working remotely or just home from being, you know, furloughed or laid off.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but was there any kind of like new activity that you started to do that you didn't do prior to COVID, like hobby?
Pretty much all the same. I living in Middlebury was kind of interesting because Middlebury jumped on it pretty fast. If you went to the co-op or any of the stores, people were very good about wearing masks or you know, staying distance. So it was probably a good place to be, because there's quite a few other places at the time in Vermont that I went to, and it seemed like the virus didn't even exist. So it was kind of a good experience to be right here in Middlebury most of the time. But I do think I probably did more home projects than normal. I went fishing more than I normally do, and I probably cross-country skied more than normal. You know, right? I think I went in May this year. Wow. Up to Reichard. I think awesome. It was around May, early May.
Yeah. So that's definitely an advantage of being in Addison County. Do you think there would be any disadvantages to living in Addison County during the pandemic?
For me, no. I think it was a good place because I am in my 60s, and having people take it as seriously as they did, including the Middlebury College students. I was quite impressed. I mean, sometimes I'd be out for a walk and I'd see, you know, 20 plus students, you know, run by, all had their masks on, all relatively distant, staying away from other people. Going to the co-op, you see them coming down, or going to Shaw's, you see them coming down the sidewalk or in the stores, being, you know, very, very serious about it. And the rest of the town really set it quite an example, I think. It was very impressive. And yeah, people didn't seem to get too mad about having to put masks on. That was kind of interesting too.
Yeah, no, that was definitely, I feel like that was definitely a surprise. I had a lot of friends coming from other places to come to Addison County, and we're like, wow, it's so cool that everyone wears masks here. So you said that you had a daughter that's a sophomore in college. Do you think, what's your opinion on the reopening processes of colleges, high schools, particularly in Vermont and Addison County? How do you think that was handled?
I think it was handled pretty much as best as it could have been by our governor and the local administrations. And colleges, I think they did well. I think they had maybe one case where my daughter went when they first opened, and that was about it. They tested randomly and found no cases. So apparently they were staying put. Maybe they were, gathering, but not traveling much or at all. Something, that probably helped quite a bit. And you can notice locally, I think the schools, it was good for them to be open, the K through 12. They probably needed to be. There's too many kids that probably divided because some can't really study remotely, and some probably excel at doing something like that. And it probably caused some children to have some definitely fall behind.
Definitely.
Not being in school.
Yeah, so how do you think that social interactions will be maybe permanently altered after the pandemic is, kind of over?
I think I'm kind of thinking back to my parents and some of my older relatives that lived through the 1918 pandemic, and they talked about the Roaring '20s. They talked about World War I a little bit. They talked about the Great Depression, on and on. They talked about World War II. They were in World War II, some of them. And they never, ever really talked about the pandemic. They never really gave it a second thought. They didn't talk about it. They didn't seem to care. And that was a pretty bad pandemic. And I think 600,000 plus the United States died, and the population of the United States was far less than it is now. And I think maybe we'll block it out of our minds and move on if the same situation happens, because I think people have probably about had it. And once the vaccines get here in maybe June or so of this year, that we're all have herd immunity, we may just move on. And, the only thing that's going to be remembered is all the debt that we've piled up in this country because of it, and maybe some lack of jobs that'll have to come back. But I would say maybe in 5 years, we might not really be thinking about it too much. It's one of those things. Humans are good at blocking, I think, things out of their mind. Hopefully we can move on.
Yeah, speaking of the vaccine, so when that does become available, do you have any concerns with the vaccine?
I thought about it early on, and I decided I would get the vaccine. And I actually signed up for some of the tests, but I never got called. So
really?
I would have gone and had a test. I mean, had a been basically due to trials.
Wow.
I signed up for UVM, and they actually contacted me, and I guess they had an overwhelming response of people trying that wanted to do the vaccine trials.
Wow.
And so anyway, I didn't get called, so no vaccine yet. I probably won't have one until June, I would guess.
Yeah. So again, your daughter went to college. How do you think the way that you said, we might look back at the pandemic and not really think anything of it, but a lot of people have thought about, especially like with the education system and the way that classes are being taught now compared to how they used to be. How do you think that might, affect your family, affect your daughter in the future?
I think for the first few years, I think we're going to try to get back to normal as best we can. It's hard to say with budgets and money how things are going to go. I think there's going to be in the next few years, there might be kind of a overwhelming influx of students into colleges because many people have taken gap years and postponed going to school. also, I think maybe some people from different, like say people that work for airlines, they might not ever come back the way they are. It might take a long time, and they might be looking to go to school to learn another career. So you might find a lot of, and colleges also are closing, cutting down. Cutting back some colleges, and there's many schools that have gone out already in the past few years, even in Vermont. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a, I think people are going to be a little bit, I think colleges are going to find a lot of applicants coming in. Try to say that the right way.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about the response of Governor Scott in Vermont, and how that was handled very well in Addison County. But I guess at a national level, if there was anything about the pandemic that you could have changed, what would that be and why?
I think Dr. Fauci, President Trump's main spokesman for COVID-19, and I think he's quite smart. I think he was saying the right things. I think we should have just probably followed his lead and done whatever he said. And I think we pretty much have in some places, but some haven't. Some people have definitely resisted this virus as being a pandemic or being as dangerous as it is. And like I said, I don't know, even today, I still don't know probably 10 people that have had it, that have actually contracted COVID-19. But the people that have had it have had a tough time with it. And not all of them are, senior citizens.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
But I do think Governor Scott did a good job. He stayed calm. Basically was stern about his, warnings and his rules, which were good. I think, sometimes you just need to do that. It's not taking people's rights away, it's saving lives. And, the rights will come back once we're through this. Like I said, we'll maybe forget about it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's very interesting that you have the perspectives of your family members that did live through something like this before. I think it's interesting to see how the pandemic might be affected now that I guess times have changed a lot since the last occurrence of this. So it'll definitely be really interesting to see.
They didn't have the media back then, but they had their methods, of communicating. So I think, in fact, that might have even been a little scarier because you don't really know what's going on. Also, I think the Senate, the Congress, the federal government, I think they were very busy with the impeachment process at the time. And, also the president too. And it almost seemed like this black cloud was coming upon us, and they were all tied up, doing something else. And it seemed kind of odd that happened. It should have been maybe postponed, or they should have taken a break from it and got to business, where, people like Dr. Fauci and some of the governors, like Governor Scott, were really front and center on this. They put it into the state's hands. And I think it would have been better, if the federal government maybe came out with a plan early on for the whole process of what we should do.
Yeah,
of course, they didn't know how it was going to be either. They didn't know that this disease was going to be basically spread, through droplets and respiratory, versus they were very big on touching things and, getting on surfaces. They were saying stainless steel and glass the virus would survive for 10, 12 days on some surfaces. And that turned out not to be the big problem. So, we've all learned, I guess, from this.
Yeah, definitely. I think you'll find with the newspaper project, there's still some things about the virus that we don't know yet, because it does take so long to research these things and understand the basis of them. So, I'm sure even after the pandemic, in the wake of the pandemic, there's still going to be a lot of research about the virus to, kind of get at these questions, like how exactly, how did it infect so many people so quickly and spread so fast, just kind of things that you're already saying.